How do you feel when you don't have anything to do? Bernadette just sighed, thinking, I wish I was there. How do you feel when you don't have anything to do? Do you feel lost? You start thinking of what to do? Or just sigh and enjoy it? We all have what psychologists call an executive function inside of our minds, or not exactly inside of our minds, but is the decider, the one that says do this or don't do that. And there are a lot of elements to describe the range of freedom that the decider has and what he or she feels within oneself. For example, if you go to a Zen monastery, the only decision you have to make is follow orders. Listen to the bells, listen to the clackers, and do what they tell you to do. You have no executive duties whatsoever. A lot of people love that. They just surrender to the structure of the monastery. Other people would find that stifling and would rather rest in doing nothing. Me, for example. When I have nothing to do, no function in anybody else's eyes or in civilization's eyes, I feel free. But when I have a lot of things to do, like figure out income tax, or how to perform a complex job, I feel stress. Doing something entirely new in a new place requires the executive function to be awake and prepared to act at all times, because there's a new situation confronting it every moment of the day. And it really doesn't know how to react ahead of time. It has to learn whether its reactions are appropriate to the situation or not. This can produce anxiety. Vesselina is coming to our country soon, leaving her safe but boring nest in Bulgaria to come to the United States for a time. I can imagine she's frightened. She's worried about her cats, what happens to them when she's away, worried about their safety. worried about what she's going to run into when she comes to the United States, what people are going to think about her, and all that kind of stuff, which she always does so well. Worries. But what about when you're retired? You're getting Social Security, maybe a pension, maybe rental income. And you feel such relief at not having anything to do anymore. No responsibility. At least that's how I felt. Then I could have rushed around trying to find some sort of thing to exercise my will in. But I didn't. I enjoyed the freedom of having nothing to do if I so choose. My body forces me to eat at least twice a day. My kidneys make me function even more often. Peeing. My cats are pretty demanding too, but they get less demanding the older they get because they're very happy doing nothing. Cats, when they get old, barely exist. So what about your executive function? Oh, how hard it is to let go of doing things when the entire life is spent obeying inner demons that tell you, you got to be this way, you got to do this, you got to do that. You got to care for this, you got to care for that. You got to follow these rules and that rules. And it goes on and on and on, adjusting to your environment and what you should be doing in that environment. And then you go to a speaker such as Robert Adams. And he tells you, relax. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go. Matter of fact, you don't even exist. So you don't have to worry about yourself and your existence, because just accept the fact that you don't exist at all and let go even more. That you're part of a dream. And after a while of listening to this, you begin to believe him. And you grow even more relaxed. Why is this executive function so stressful? Why is doing things and imposing order on yourself? Why does it feel so unnatural and so burdensome, at least for many? For me, it makes me feel very happy when I wake up in the morning, knowing I have nothing to do the rest of the day that's scheduled. I can do whatever I want, which is usually nothing. But what is this executive function? Psychologists talk about it. You can sort of feel it in yourself. It's the decider. It's that thing within you that determines what you have to do and what you don't have to do. Deciders about control. It controls your body. It maybe attempts to control others. But by itself, you can investigate the decider inside of you by going deep within, the emptiness within, and penetrating down many levels. You can find that place in you where seeing happens, hearing happens, decisions happen. And the thing is, it's not a point. There's no center. There's no thing there. It's just more empty space within yourself. But in that empty space, decisions are made. But it's identical to all the other space that you see around yourself. But it indeed feels very empty. The decisions and the sensing that goes on within you isn't localized in a little ball. It's spread out throughout your body, or at least your inner perception of your body. But you can be there with it just as it's happening, which means there's part of you looking at you even while you're doing all those things. Now you can divide the looker and the doer into different categories and say it's two different people. Or you can say to yourself, I can do two different things inside of myself and still be only one. I think we tend to divide things up and make them separate rather than to bring them all together and mingle them. That separation seems to bring a kind of clarity where you separate one function from another function. And that at least can be discussed about more easily, rather than to talk about the complexities of the unity inside yourself. But somewhere along the line, you become aware that any analysis you make is really bullshit. It's your own arrangement of different parts of your inner universe in an attempt to understand what's going on inside of you. And the point is, you can never really understand what's going on inside of you because it's never really possible to understand anything, internal or external, because understanding is always in terms of words. And not according to what the world is. Mind grasps the world through concepts and thinking. It creates a network of thought. And that network of thought contains our understanding of the world. Scientists know this. But they decide to allow certain things to fool themselves, to make them feel the world is more under control than it really is, by imagining their theories and models of the world really picture what's going on in the world when they don't. There's just verbal models of the world and not the world itself. You are the world itself. But that doesn't mean you can understand you or witness yourself. All that you ever know really are the phenomena. And when you head for the source inside of yourself, it always eludes you. Because pursuit of the source means that the source is more and more revealed. And as it's revealed, it becomes an object. And the depths of the self always recede to you because as soon as you witness them, they become other. And the field of you keeps expanding. But you can never find you in there, and you know it. The mystery is that you can never know yourself. You can only be yourself. And what happens when you are yourself? You accept yourself as yourself. There's a profound relaxation. Maybe a laugh. You're not looking for a self anymore because you know that there's no self that can be found because the process of finding pushes it away. Will always be unknown because as soon as you know it, it becomes known. There's still that mystery in the background, which you are, which recedes. And again, within minutes, it's just out of your grasp. You're like a lively ghost that keeps running from being observed because it knows in its observation it'll die and become part of a world, object world, rather than the subject. There's a vast difference between you and the world, you think. You think I am the source, and the world is phenomena. And as such, The world isn't real. It's just sense data. But then what are you? You can't be found in that sense data. But you can look for the source of that sense data inside of yourself and locate it actually. But even though you can locate it, you know it's not you because you're looking at it. Observing the visual sense, even when used figuratively, causes a gap between the subject and object. To obtain freedom, you have to become pretty comfortable with the tolerance for chaos. Now, in monasteries, chaos is kept at a minimum by limiting all your decisions, controlling all of your actions, what you speak, what you eat, when you sleep, etc. And there's a kind of relaxation that happens then when you give up the executive function in you and let it instead be replaced by the laws and the hierarchy of the monastery. Then that executive function doesn't have to function. It just does as it's supposed to, according to the rules of the monastery. And you can feel the profound relaxation that does happen because of that when you realize that. Inside of you is a vast space that's just as vast as the space in the external universe. And relaxation comes when you agree to life on the terms dictated by the situation you're in. If that's a monastery, it means conforming to all the rules. And these rules depend upon the environment you choose to live in. If you get a job, some big corporation may have a very complex job, high pressure job with lots of things to do, such that at the end of the day, you feel exhausted, can hardly wait to go home. Or you can become a museum guard in a little visited art museum and be relatively free to think what you want and do what you want within the confines of that particular building and grounds. But the ability to go inside of yourself to the depths where you encounter the executive function, where decisions are made, where hearing occurs and seeing occurs and thinking occurs. It's quite awesome. Here you're in the center of your own universe, watching yourself function in the deepest way possible within you. And then imagine saying to you, go for it. Reside anywhere in yourself that you want. It's all good. You can be on the surface. You can be following the monastery's rules. You can then be anything you want inside. You can be a character in the play. You can have a role. Or you can escape the role altogether and just be yourself and witness yourself without having to do anything. Just the freedom to not do anything. And when you have a freedom to not do anything, that's real freedom. Sink within yourself. Go into that emptiness within. Sink below your thoughts. Think below the place where you feel you have something to do, a function, or things you have to do. Sink even deeper, go beyond, go below that place where you've escaped from all your duties and you're just free to be. And in this place, you become your own beingness. The fundamental state of being alive is beingness. It's the basement, so to speak, that everything else is added on to. Feeling and senses have at their core beingness. The thinker has at its core beingness. Beingness is the substrata for all other stratas above. There's nothing deeper than beingness except nothing. And that's where the ultimate freedom is, in nothingness. But you have to decide, is that what you want? Nothingness. To want nothingness is sort of going against everything in your life up to that point. School is 13 years of indoctrination. And if you go to college, it's more indoctrination. And the reality that's revealed by your indoctrination the world you live in. Gets more and more complex the deeper you go or the longer you live. Freedom. Freedom to do nothing, to be nothing. To be like a ghost with no form, no purpose, no rank. And in that freedom, in that emptiness, to find peace. To be able to find that executive function within yourself. Is kind of important. Because you find the root of the beingness you are there. And at this point, you can unravel all the secrets of your existence, being at your root. There's a kind of bliss in that peacefulness that you obtain when you desire nothing. You don't even desire to be free, because at this level, the burden of beingness is so mild, it's not stressful. Have you gone away yet? Have you left it all behind? Do you feel the peace? And you could ask yourself, what good is this peace? But it has no function whatsoever. No good comes out of it. No bad comes out of it. It's an absence of everything. Chris, what is your experience now within that emptiness?
In the emptiness, there was a perceiver. I mean, there were thoughts, and then there was something watching the thoughts, but then ultimately it was all in just being experienced in the emptiness. There was different, I felt like I had different layers. The thoughts at the top, then something, like you said, this executive function, but ultimately there was something just passively watching it all happen. And that's what I felt was ultimately in the emptiness, is just this piece of things were happening, but it just watched, and I just experienced all this stuff. It didn't mean anything. It just was. And it felt good. It felt very peaceful. These things were happening, but since I didn't care, it's not that I didn't care, there was nothing to care. It just was watching, and things were just happening. And it felt like these things were in a space, a big volume. The things would come in and out of that space and that volume. But the volume was just, I don't know what the word is. I was gonna say potential, just things happen, but it wasn't, things happen in it, but not by it. And it felt, like I said, it felt peaceful because nothing was really happening to the thing watching. It was just watching. And it didn't have any reactions or emotions. It was just, I was just watching. And like I said, it felt like something watching something, watching something. And ultimately there was a thing that just watched.
What about you, Mark?
It's hard for me to talk about it because I spend most, if not all, my time in this state, most of my time. It's like my home state. Yeah, I like what Chris said. I do take issue, though, when you say that there's nothing happening. For me, there is something happening. There's a deep sense of contentment and all that, and sometimes very strong feeling of euphoria. Not always, but it can be. There can be stuff happening, even though it's a steady, it's peaceful. It feels safe and comforting. But a lot of times there is more than just like a spacious nothingness or whatever. It feels like life, and sometimes the life has a euphoric, energetic, interesting aspect. But that's all. So I like what Chris said, though, about the layers. But the thoughts at top, and underneath it, kind of the emotions or whatever, the sensations, and then underneath it, at the very bottom, is the fundamental state from which upon which all are added, and in that state, you are the host of the spiritual mansion. You are unaffected by anything. You're just in that. You're just subsiding in the source, and you're feeling very, very. You're feeling absent of all the crap that usually bothers you. It's very nice. So that's all I could really say.
Jay, what about you?
Your words take me to a very gentle place. I'm blessed in the sense of really being useless most of the time nowadays. I don't think a lot about function, or there's no particular need to do or be anywhere. And it's an abiding grace that's very deep. My formal meditation is still pretty abysmal, like my concentration. I still, there's the chatter of the mundane world, but I try to make everything a meditation. And in that sense, it takes me deeper. And again, I don't want to say a lot because the bane of my existence is speaking when you're recording, so I will try to keep it short. But very, very deep, profoundly blessed, and deep resonance in manifest God and grace and joy, and yeah.
Bernadette?
I can feel the relief when there's nothing to do and nothing to be. And I realize where the anxiety comes from when I want to control or be a certain way, or be prepared for something. And when that happens, I try to be unprepared and just be and go into it. But the ever changingness, we said you have to accept the chaos or something like that. Everything is ever changing, including myself, my perception of myself and everything around me, and to be comfortable letting go of that part that wants to be prepared. That's what's been coming to me today. But it's just a wonderful relief to do nothing, to absolutely just sink into nothing.
With an increased tolerance of chaos, one can relax in the middle of a war. What about you, Veselina? Confronting some big changes now, as well as the constant pressure of being a student. What did you experience?
Well, I don't know. I just feel sad for some reason.
What's in the sadness? Why are you sad? Let's find out why you're sad.
Because I'm always looking for something in the wrong place.
A lot of that has been forced on you, though. Your parents' expectations and desires for you has formed a large part of all the things that you do.
Yeah.
And I think a part of you wants to escape that, but for what end? Why are you sad?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know, but I don't want to say it.
You know, but you don't know.
I just don't want to share it with everyone.
Okay. Okay. It helps if you can befriend emptiness and let go of control inside that emptiness and let whatever happens happen. Then everything that happens sort of just tickles you rather than grabs you. Emptiness is your friend. And below that emptiness is your greatest friend. Nothingness, non-existence. Existence is hard. There's always wants and needs within existence. But in non-existence, there's no stress. There's no stress. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go. Of course, you're not alive, but there's no stress. And the closest you get to that is in the depths of emptiness, where you're on the cusp of being nothing. There's utter relaxation, utter peace. Yeah, you can see all the layers and how they're intertwined. But basically, you're removed from concern about it. You're removed from your concern about your house and your apartment, your job, even your relationship. Here you're resting in the deepest part of yourself. Bare awareness. Where everything is just a seed and not a full-grown plant or tree yet. Everything is a potential. Mark, I'm wondering why you have difficulty describing it.
Well, as I've said here many times, I have I have no problem experiencing what you talk about, the states that you talk about. I have problem explaining or describing it. And I just generally have that problem, especially when you're talking about something as
Fundamental.
as well as like metaphysical, or as, you know, inner experiences are hard in general to define. And it's just very difficult for me to describe what I experience. It's no problem for me to experience it. So that's all I can say. It's a deficiency that I have, and I've always had it. And you were talking about executive function. I happen to have a very simple executive function. So if that explains anything to you. And executive function does more than just decide what to do. It also is the part of one that is the managerial, supervisory, the one that delegates and that breaks up complex tasks into its components and assigns. That part I'm really crappy at, always have been. So maybe that helps me though in achieving these states, because I was, you know, if executive function is a weakness, if integrating into being accepted by the system, I've, you know, been rejected by the system very young, since I was very young. So I've seen through a lot of the things that typically hold people back, because I never really was accepted for who I was until finding you. So that's all I can say. You seem to have a very strong executive function and very strong engineering kind of brain, and I don't. So there are things about me that would be hard for you to understand, because there are strengths that you have that I don't, that you have that I don't have. And it could be the other way too. I have strengths that you may not have. Anyways, it's nothing intentional. It's just the way my brain is designed, I guess, the way my reasoning works.
Tim, how is your brain designed?
Apologies, I got the clock change wrong. My brain.
Your inner world.
My inner world. I had a very interesting week, because I guess because of my experience last Sunday. Did you get an email from me at Satsang Online? Okay. I'd realized before the meeting, but I realized that I'd kind of arrived at a kind of hiatus, this sort of dead zone where I'd lost touch with my feelings. And that was highlighted and remedied, I think remedied by the Satsang, the Shakti. So I started to revive my regular practice, but change it to meet your suggestions. So I started pondering the Nisargadatta Gita twice daily. And when going within to the I am, really, I actually began to feel a warmth and sense in the center of my chest. And I hadn't really done that before. I hadn't actively done that before anyway, as a practice. But I experienced that, and it I allowed it to spread or expand. And it's very, very different. I also took up the recommendation of listening to chanting. And as I said in the email, we used to do that 30 years ago, my wife and I. And I got, without, not in a nostalgic living the past way, I got back, if you will, a sense of that lightness that we used to experience then, or that I used to experience then. We both did, but yeah. And I also realized how easy it is to get duped by certain teachers who seem to not be neo-Advaitin or teaching in that way, but
Say that
actually,
again? I didn't.
yeah, I noticed that how easily I've I don't know about been fooled, but kind of thought that some teachers who seem not to be teaching in the way of neo-Advaita actually were, with a few augmentations, and it didn't have the depth that this has. The little experience I've had of this from your recordings and stuff and writings, it was like a completely different order of experience. And I guess that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Most teachers are full of shit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, really. I mean,
The
there's one
ones,
born every day on YouTube. But go on.
the ones that talk about the more fundamental things and immerse in them can take you somewhere. Otherwise, you're just following your mind.
Right.
Now, Osho was a mixture of a teacher and a guru. He had a lot of intellectual understanding, but the way he expressed it was mesmerizing and transformative. A rare combination. Robert, on the other hand, struggled with teaching. He spent the whole day before satsang, according to his wife, trying to formulate what he would say in satsang. And over a period of time, he sort of simplified it into a standard rap. But about that time, his voice deteriorated to the extent it was just mostly mumbling. And he used to joke that some teachers are silent and don't say anything. Others are very articulate and teach a lot of theory. He said, but there's only one who mumbles, which was him. The mumbling guru. Robert, really, when you're around him, you go to lunch with him or go for a walk with him, he really didn't have much to say. But you never felt uncomfortable in the silence around him, because he always seemed amenable to talking if the need arose or if you wanted to say something. It was a very comfortable silence. Not one of those kinds of silences when you felt awkward and you try to think of a way to break the ice. He had a kind of air of acceptance in him that all you wanted to do was be with him. It didn't matter what the conversation was. See, each of you has a sense of presence that marks you as you. There's a unique individual like Jay, who is kind of worshipful and into surrendering. And that's their central theme. Vesselina's is fragmentation. Michael's desire is to be empty, without purpose or direction. But he goes through a lot of different ways of getting to that. I must confess, I have less and less to say. I thought for about 3 hours this morning what I was going to talk about. Normally, it comes to me within just a few minutes. Sometimes it never comes. And I just feed out bullshit that I've heard and said in the past. But sometimes the Shakti is here, which informs everything I say and spreads around the room. At other times, the Shakti isn't here, and I just babble. It's really a great reckoning to realize that you don't have anything to say. And the only thing you really do have to say is worship that emptiness within that beingness that is you. Because there's where peace is found. And at the end of the day, peace will be the only thing that satisfies. Consummation of great love just means more love. It's more and more effort. There's no rest in it. There's just a lot of emotion in it. A lot of feelings of God and divinity and surrender and bliss. And it's a very active kind of thing. But what Robert is about, or was about, was the silence. When everything else is said and done, what are you? Where are you? I still say that Advaita and those who teach like Advaita is really a religion for old people that don't feel like they have a lot to do. It's just a lot to be. It's not about doing, it's about being, and being more and more comfortable, and doing less and less, and being less and less. So you get to the essence of you, the beingness, and the consciousness at the heart of beingness. Robert truly was good for nothing. But he was happy. It's a relaxation of that need to be in charge and to do the executive function. Losing the executive function and just being a scarecrow blowing in the wind. And at the same time saying, what, me worry?